Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invite. It's yeah, really good to see so many of you and just be able to kind of tackle this topic as best we can in the time that we have. So just to kind of introduce myself, so as Tasha said, I run an organisation called Brix. So we're based in Stowmarket in Suffolk. So I'm from across the pond, but if it does help in kind of yeah, make kind of showing that I'm a Norfolk person by heart is I've always been a long time Norwich fan, and my dad has as well. So hopefully you can welcome me, even though I am from Suffolk. And so yeah, so we basically help other charities and social enterprises attract investment, encourage participation, and create impact through helping them build their brands. So we're a social enterprise ourselves as well. So all the profits that we make go back to a charity called the Mix in Stowmarket. I can see Rose, who's the marketing manager at the Mix. So all the profits that we make then goes back to sustaining their youth work provision. And so our focus is really on helping people understand how they can use creativity and be able to be equipped with the skills that you need to be able to become sustainable and effective at getting a message out there. And we also support young people in being able to kind of train them up in being able to support other charities and social enterprises as well, which is something we're trying to develop this year. But the goals of this session really are to, as we've spoken about, kind of talk about how you can get your message out there, a few marketing principles and ideas that you can use in your own organizations. So we won't necessarily be talking specifically about like tactics and kind of how you use TikTok, for example, to drive engagement and those sort of specific things. But these principles that we'll talk about are kind of can be used across the board on a range of different channels. So the goal of teaching you kind of these ideas is that hopefully it will be able to give you a foundation that no matter what channels you're comfortable with using or how much time you have, you can at least start to plot a path to being able to communicate more effectively in your marketing and in your communications. So yeah, so if you have any questions as we go through, as Tasha said, kind of put them in the chat and we'll answer them as best we can. And I've tried to kind of cover a lot of the questions that were asked as you signed up during the session as well. I'll just share my screen and then we can get started. So hopefully you can all see that okay. I'll just hide these. Excellent. So obviously the first thing we're going to talk about is kind of the key pillars to a brand that gets the attention it deserves. So we all want attention as organizations, all of us, you know, especially in the charity sector. One thing that we've found is when you have the attention from people, you actually end up impressing them because you can show them the incredible work you're doing. And one thing that we've found is the biggest challenge is actually perhaps getting that initial attention and being able to kind of engage people from there. But once you get that, you know, I'm sure your services are fantastic, and it's just communicating that and working out how to deliver that that's the biggest challenge. And so we're not going to spend too much time talking about the real challenges and focusing on the negatives. We're going to think about kind of strategies to deal with the challenges we're facing, but across the board, and then a lot of foundation surveys and research in the sector, generally these things will come up as the top three challenges. So funding is a big challenge. Demand for services, I'm sure you've found that since COVID as well yourselves, is huge. And also capacity and capability. So obviously all these things kind of create a cocktail of challenges that are often quite challenging to address in the best of times, and particularly during this time at the moment. Perhaps, you know, budgets are even tighter and funding might not be quite as readily available. But we believe that actually communication and building your brand is going to be a huge way of being able to address these areas across the board for a long time. So what we can do is, as you build an effective social brand, there's a few key pillars that we think need to be addressed. And so before you think that, you know, we've just come on here as a webinar to try and sell our services, that's not the case at all, because we believe that brand is actually far more than just your design or your, your marketing or your website, but your brand kind of touches everything that you do. So this is quite a good definition that we use often with our clients: is a brand is someone's gut feeling about a product or service. And so everyone creates their own version of your organization. So people that engage with you, people that see your work on social media or see your website, they all create an idea of what they think your organization is based on the information that they have. And we all do the same ourselves as well. So yeah, if you think about Apple, or if you think about Nike or those huge brands, you often have a picture of the type of organizations they are, based on the things that you've seen with them, based on the people that wear their brand and that kind of thing. And so the good news is that we're all building our brands already, and we've already started that work. And so it's really about kind of thinking about how we continue to do that in an effective way, making sure that the strategy and the vision of our organization is kind of aligned with the day-to-day communication, as well as the kind of internal workings of your organization as well. So these are just a few areas. Obviously, your charity brand will touch all these different areas, whether you're a social enterprise as well. Your services, your team, your website, your verbal messaging, your internal communications, your marketing materials, everything ties into the building that perception and building that gut feeling that people have of you as an organization. And so we think the key pillars of an effective social brand and charity and social enterprise brand are these 4 things here. So I'll just kind of take you quickly through them, because obviously this isn't the core purpose of this webinar, but actually it's just helpful in being able to kind of understand this before we move on to the other things. So strong core values. So we all have things we believe, we all have things that we are working towards, we all have kind of personality and behaviors that we think are important to caring for people and to supporting people. So having those core values defined as an organization is really important, so that people are aligned, you're aligned in terms of your team know what you expect of them. And also you can kind of start to use that as a filter in terms of the type of people you work with from a partnership perspective, and also how you communicate from a marketing perspective. So that's a really important first step. And it's very likely you've got a lot of these things already, which is always good as well. And then a strong positioning and strategy. So what we mean by that is, where you sit in the market, and how, the vision that you have and the strategy you want to take in being able to reach your goals and support more people, or develop your vision even more. And so understanding exactly where you sit and why you're different to others is another really key part of communicating well, and also marketing your organization well. Because if you don't know where you sit and why you're different, and how you can differentiate yourselves or collaborate with other organizations who are in a similar position, that becomes a bit more difficult, especially when funding's tight. And then an effective brand identity. So this is more focusing on your front face of your organization. So your messaging, your communication, your website, the way you describe yourselves, the way you communicate. These are all things that is important in getting out there. And then all these things are really good, but you want to make sure they're sustainable, so you can kind of control them yourselves as best you can internally, but also mean that actually yourself so well that if there's opportunities that you find that come up that you're not necessarily expecting, that you're able to kind of transform and kind of be able to tweak your messages and tweak what you do in order to meet the challenges and the changes in technology or whatever they may be in society. So we think those are the core pillars. And so a really good example of I should say before we get to the example, if you get these things right, what you'll then start to do is you'll start to create an organization which will connect with people emotionally, because you'll know what you stand for, you'll know who fits in with that organization, you'll know the messages you need to deliver, you'll be able to work towards your goals in an effective way, you'll be more attractive to funders and donors because they know exactly who you're for. You have a vision and an idea of exactly what you stand for and how you can reach those people. You'll gain more attention because you have an identity that people can engage with, and you also have an organization that people feel like they want to join the journey of. And you'll also increase your trust with people. Obviously it comes down to trust, but if you're open and if you're honest with people, if you talk in a way that they understand, you'll create trust with them. So a really good brand, a social enterprise that is obviously quite a large organization now, but Tony's Chocolonely do a fantastic job of this. So what they do is, they want to try and, as it says on their website here, they want to create 100% slave-free kind of supply chains in the kind of chocolate and confectionery industry. And so they want to kind of remove the unequal distribution that is across the supply chain, and to be able to pay farmers and the people in these areas a fair wage, and to be able to eradicate kind of child slavery on this supply chain, which is obviously quite a serious problem with larger confectionery organizations. And so, but their whole business is based around showing people that they can create a slave-free supply chain and be an effective organization, which is what they're doing at the moment. They're paying people properly, they're supporting farmers, they're making sure there's no slavery and that sort of thing in their supply chains that they're using. But they're also, in their marketing, obviously their bars are unequally divided. They're telling a story using their products and their marketing. So you'll often see them on social media call out different big chocolate brands like Nestle and kind of say, we want to talk to you about this or this sort of thing. And they also do things like they had an advent calendar where some of the doors in the advent calendar don't have anything in because they're showing that there's unequal distribution within the chocolate industry. So that's the message that they're delivering, but the way they're delivering that is kind of across their organization, not just in what they do, but in also what they say and in how they communicate. And that leads to people knowing exactly what they stand for. And they also get more attention because, if you get an advent calendar that hasn't got any chocolates in some doors, some people are going to be quite annoyed and put it on social media. So automatically you start to create a bit of a buzz around your organization based on these ideas. So the good news is we're all building our brands and we're all able to address these challenges in-house, that you don't necessarily need external support. But what do we do with this information and how can it help us in our marketing? So I'll explain the kind of tips that I would recommend based following this session. So how to get your messages out to the right people. So the first thing is communicating in the right way. So often we'll use language that we know what it means in the charity sector, but sometimes people on the outside or funders might not know exactly what we mean by certain things. So we describe it like this. So if you're speaking in Spanish to someone who only speaks French, you can communicate in the most fantastic way possible in the best Spanish you can possibly do, but the French person won't get it because they don't speak that language. And it's much the same in your marketing. If you don't understand your audiences, or if you don't understand the people you're talking to and have someone in mind, it's going to be very difficult to communicate with them because you're going to try and think about what they might like rather than being quite sure on what's motivating them. So we do something like this with our clients, which is something, so we've got a template for this, which I'm more than happy to give to anyone in this call and anyone that asks for it, really, to kind of work through it themselves, because we think it's really helpful to be able to clarify these ideas. So these 7 questions, which are, what do you do and how do you do it? So what are your services? And what is your process in delivering those services? So there might be several in this area, but writing those down and being really clear on what you offer is really important to nail down with you and your team. So this could be something that you address in a team meeting, or you might already have a lot of this information in a vision and mission document, and you can just put it into this document, which will help you with your marketing. And who are you here for? So who are you trying to serve? So we normally split this into primary and secondary audiences. So your primary audiences are the people you're serving directly. So it might be young people, it might be people with learning disabilities or additional needs, or it could be anything really. So you have your primary audiences, the people you serve directly with your services, and then you have your secondary audiences, which are the people you need to reach in order to continue your work. So that might be funders, that might be the parents of people who are looking after young people, or professionals who are working with young people. Again, I always give kind of a youth work example, because we work with a lot of different youth work and kind of mental health organisations. But being able to define those people is really good, because if you think about, sometimes people like to think about audience archetypes and things like that as well. So thinking about who are the exact people that you would think of in, when you're engaging on social media, when you're writing a funding bid, can you almost create a caricature of who that person is based on the things you know about them? So with funders on their website, they'll kind of talk about their motivations, they'll talk about their focuses over the next few years in terms of the people they want to fund. So if you can start to think about who you're writing the funding bid for and the type of person that might be reading that, and the same with social media or content on your website, it will automatically make sure that you can empathize with them and improve your copy. And it will also ensure that you understand the channels to communicate with them as well. And then what are your values? We've already spoke about what is your vision and mission? What's your personality? How do you want to interact with people? How do you interact with people in your services over social media? How do you want to communicate? Why are you different? Again, thinking about your differences can be really key when filling out funding bids or when thinking about marketing campaigns, because people remember things that are different. So if you can start to focus on those differences, as provided they're positive ones, that's really helpful. And then what's your purpose? So longer term, what would be the impact of what you do, and what would the world look like if you achieve your core goal, and what would your community look like? Those are really important things. So they start to tell a story of what an organization is like, and it also starts to kind of it starts to create a picture in the people's mind, whoever's engaging with it, whether you're trying to gain more volunteers, whether you're trying to improve your fundraising. All these areas are really important in being able to know how the person can fit in with that, whether they can contribute financially or not. Whatever they can do, they can start to put themselves within your story as an organization. So then once you have those questions clarified in your marketing, it helps you understand the type of people you can approach. You'll have a unified message across the team. In an ideal world, you'll get your kind of brand manifesto all sorted and packed and in, content that you're really happy with. And then people can kind of copy bits out of that document and then use it for social media. They could create a bit of content around it, or write a blog post about it. Or when you talk to people at events, you can talk to them about part of the messages that you have. But you've automatically then got a document which stops you needing to worry necessarily about thinking of all these ideas, but you can kind of use this with your team to be a basis for and a foundation for the ideas that you can think about. You also understand the pain points of people and what they're struggling with. Obviously, in this time, we need to communicate sensitively, and we need to communicate in a way that that is sensitive to what people are going through, and particularly, across the board with charity and social enterprises, we always need to think about what people might be struggling with. And when you understand your audience well enough, you understand your goal as an organization well enough, that makes that job a lot easier. I'm not saying that none of you would understand your audience already, because I'm sure you do, but sometimes across your teams, perhaps sometimes that goal and that document isn't necessarily defined as clearly. And so if you can kind of ensure that everyone is aware of this across the board, automatically you're all on the same page, and new team members can immediately buy into what you do. And then you understand the methods to deliver the message to them. So you can create hook messages, which you can deliver in certain formats. Those are things we'll talk about in a minute. But those are basically short messages that kind of grab people in and say, and they see something on, if it's on your website, if it's on a social media post, if you say it to them in person, they'll kind of be like, oh, tell me more about that, because I want to know more what's going on. And so creating these hook messages from the ideas that are based in your manifesto document can be really, really effective. And then you can also understand how, what channel you can deliver that message on. So whether it be social media, whether it be your website, whether it be a blog post, whether it be an interview or a press, like a PR press release, you could do that, and you can then know exactly the channels you need to communicate to reach those people. So if you need to work with more businesses because funding isn't as available, you can start to create an audience archetype of the type of businesses you want to work with. So what motivates them as a business? What skills do they have internally that could really support your work? But if you understand your audiences and you've created these audience archetypes based on the people you're trying to reach, you can exactly understand straight away the channel that you need to deliver that message to them, because you know exactly what's motivating them and how best to reach them. And so creating those archetypes is really important. So a few just general marketing points without spending a penny. So these are all things that are can be really easily done, and kind of approaches that you can take. So one thing to say is try not to overvalue social media too much. So a lot of people, when they're concerned about their marketing, often they think just posting 100 posts, every month or whatever on social media is going to be the way to deal with it. That's not necessarily the case. So, without spending money on adverts on social media, you're only ever going to reach 7% of your audience on there. That's because the social media companies obviously want you to spend with them. So they their algorithm works in a way that means that you won't be able to reach as many people as you think. Obviously, that is the benefit of using new social media channels like TikTok, because you do get a larger kind of growth and reach on there, but that will eventually change as well. And so try not to overvalue social media too much, but instead, if you can focus on your the kind of using social media as a bit like a hook and a bit like that top of the funnel, so where you can kind of grab people's attention and then feed them into your website or your or a newsletter, or bring them into your offices or your cafe or wherever it may be, that can be really effective. So I'm not saying that social media isn't effective in being able to start to get yourselves out there to people who may not know of you, because it can be really effective, but try not to see it as the be all and end all, and try and come up with a way that you can engage with people beyond that, and kind of put them in a different direction through social media. So your website, again, what's your content like? Is it accessible? Is it easy to read? Does it highlight the value of what you deliver? Is there a kind of next step that people can take? So can they sign up to be a volunteer easily? Can they contact you easily? Is there something that they can download to be able to get in contact with them? So this is kind of seen as like a lead generation tactic. So some things we'd recommend, kind of, you could run an event. So if you wanted to work with more businesses, as an example, and you wanted to gain their support, you could run an event just at your base or somewhere else, and just be able to bring people in a room, and just be able to kind of start to have a conversation with people that you might not normally do. So you could also run courses, or you could give away some of your content. So if you work with young people, perhaps some of your youth workers might be able to deliver training to other youth workers or parents, or different things like this. But I'm sure you've got people in your organizations who are fantastic at what they do, and actually what they give could be really valuable to someone else, and could show, not only highlight your kind of expertise in the sector, but also be able to generate a way of talking with other organizations, or talking with other businesses or volunteers that could support you. and just being able to deliver that support can first of all act as a kind of prevention measure, because if you can give a little bit of support and get people's contact details, as an example, so if people have to sign up for a newsletter or put their email in order to unlock this content, that can be really effective, because then people can see what you do, but also that might just be the little bit of support that they need in order to for that challenge not to escalate further. So it can work in a twofold way there. And then continue to kind of send press releases or blog posts to local press. So we talk about ways you can do this in a minute, but spend some time thinking about what your audiences need. So again, I don't mean everyone that you need to speak to, but if you have a specific need in your organization at the moment, say if you need more people to engage with your services, or if you need more businesses or more funding to work with, you can start to think about, right, this is the challenge we have, this is the audience we have, how do we reach them, and could we run an event, could we create, with businesses, creating a fundraising challenge? It can be really effective, because you make use of their networks. Basically, you don't have to rely on your own network, but you can say, actually, would you do an internal kind of challenge, fundraising challenge for us, and could you kind of put that over social media? That can be really effective, because then you're kind of putting the onus on the organization. You're making use of their network, and also they will often have the resources that are often very stretched within your organization themselves. So if you can kind of get an organization that you're partnered with, or a group of volunteers that you're partnered with, to be able to start to create these challenges and develop these fundraising methods, that can be really effective, because it takes the onus off you. You can oversee that, but they can start to be really creative. So one thing that we've done with some organizations is kind of create a bit of a pack in terms of, if you want to fundraise for us, or this can be just a PDF as well, perhaps you could do something like this, and that could tie in with your services. So you could say, would you like to do a run 20k, or the distance between your office and their office over the month? Can you track it? Can you send us videos of people doing it? You'd be surprised that when you put a bit of competitivity into businesses and into these organizations, it can be really effective, because those businesses have the resources, and they also want to be able to show that they're supporting you as well as an organization. So those are just a few ideas and a few examples based on key things, but you can do the same with funders as well. Like we said, if you understand what your fund is looking for, you can communicate in a way they understand. So as we move forward with this, and I appreciate I've rambled a lot around these topics, because there's so much, there's probably more than I should have added into this PowerPoint, and I'll send everyone the document for this so you can kind of refer back to it. And as I said, we'll chat about it a little bit more later on anyway, if we need to, and individually. But there's also, once you have got your audience, you've got your message, and you know exactly what you stand for, it's now then using storytelling to be able to deliver that to your organization. So when you understand who you're for, the audience, the message you have, you can then shape a story around it. So as an example, so we did a bit of work with an organisation called Selig Suffolk. So they run a shelter for people who don't have a home during the winter, and they're also kind of developing their services even more. So their purpose statement that they came up with was to remind those without a home that they exist, they're cared for, and to help them live healthier and happier lives. So that was their kind of big vision, their goal. And so we then helped them, as a result of having this manifesto, to work through these messages. So we kind of created these symbols alongside them, which tied in with their logo. But so Selig, for those people, for their key audiences, which were people without a home, people who were homeless. So Selig was a home for those without a home. Selig was a springboard to a fresh start, because they were providing support to them. And then Selig was a door to healthier community. So we kind of just created these simple messages, and on their own, obviously you may think, oh, that doesn't really say anything about what they do, but when you use them in the right way. So for example, they then did a bit of kind of a marketing campaign around, what does home mean to you? You know, you can interview your team, you could interview you know, volunteers, you could interview people that have actually been part of your organization. So what does that mean to you? What does a fresh start mean to you? You could write a blog post around the new project you've got, which is about you know, your new housing scheme and your new support or your new partnership you're making with a business. So the reason for saying this is you can just create these simple kind of hook messages that then almost provide like a gateway to then create content out of it. So again, you could do a blog post on these topics. You could do a bit of a series on social media around, what does it mean to have a home? What does it mean to you? And you can just start to shape a story around your services that isn't really in your face, but it is able to deliver the value of what you do as an organization, and engages people in, oh, actually, I can imagine what it'd be like to not have a home. I can imagine what it'd be like to not have a second chance. And automatically then people want to respond to that. So the same with businesses, the same with funders. If you can, you know, if you said, you know, we're this organization, we're a home for those without, what does that mean to us? This means this, this, and this, and these are how we address those challenges. That can be a really effective method and a simple way of just being able to have an endless amount of content that you could create based on the ideas that are in this manifesto. So quick fire storytelling tips, because I have gone over my time by quite a lot. Sorry about that, Tash. But so think of your organization as a helper. So this is from a book called Building Your Story Brand, which some of you may have read. So you do fantastic work as organizations, but you help people in an incredible way. So focus on how you help those people. So try not to necessarily talk about, you know, this is more of a problem in the business world, where people kind of talk about how much money they've made and this sort of thing as a way to describe their organization. But actually, if you say, we support these people in living healthier and happier lives, as we just spoke about, or that kind of thing, focus on how you help those people. So again, when you're writing to someone, when you're writing a press release, when you're writing to a business, or when you're writing to a funder, show them how their input and their funding and their support that they offer could make a huge difference to what you deliver. Show them how they can be part of the journey. And then have someone in mind as you write or communicate, as we kind of spoke about, thinking about those audiences. Create pictures in people's minds. So like I said, these key messages, or just telling a bit of a story about someone's journey with your organization, is so powerful. And I'm sure you've already got incredible stories from people that you already work with. This is also a tip from a guy called Steve Allman. He's a guy on LinkedIn who is from Suffolk as well. And he delivers fantastic advice on kind of writing and all sorts of different charity sector advice. It's worth following him on LinkedIn. But he said you should use the term so that. So we do this so that people can have a healthier life, or so that people can get the support they need, so there can be better justice, so parents can be, you can have the support that they need. So using that "so that" term is really important, because it shows the direct impact that you're having on people and the change that you could make with people. And that's really what you want to show in your marketing. And then what action could they take after engaging with you? What are you calling them to? What would be the impact if you've got this funding? If someone helped you, if a business supported you, what could be the impact, and how could it affect them and their community that they work in? While funding might not be available, there are a lot of businesses who would be able to try and support you as an organization, I'm sure, and being able to show them the impact that would make in their community is a fantastic way of getting them to engage with you. And then focus on your case studies and testimonials. So try and work as smartly as possible in this area. So if you have people who are happy to be on camera, could they film something on their phone, or could you just go around to your team to get them to tell a story about the impact that it's made, and you can then put it on social media. You could write a blog post about it, but you can start to communicate these ideas through those challenges, and then structuring them so you can empathize with the group of people you're writing to. What are their challenges? How might they feel when they read this? So you can start off by saying, hi, look, we know it's a difficult time at the moment. We know things are tough in our community, but this is what we're doing to address this. This is what we're doing to support you. This is how we can, this is how it can benefit you. This is how you can solve the problem we're having. And then how do they get involved? So I'll let you read through that bit, because I've kind of explained it as we go through, but structuring things like that, so empathizing with the person, talking about what you're promoting, talking about the value of what you're promoting, and then telling them how to get involved is a really good way. If you're writing a paragraph, or if you're doing a social media post, if you're writing on your website, that can be a really good way to structure your information. And then you may have seen on YouTube, there's quite a lot of adverts for this, but you can kind of, there's different storytelling tactics and cards that you can use, which might be interesting to use for your organization, but you can just start to use these creative ways of communicating with people in your work and on your website, different things like that. And story doesn't need to just be words. As we said, your brand is kind of being developed across the board. So what story does the way you deliver services tell? I'm sure you've got a brilliant team, and focusing on the work they do could be really powerful. What experience do people have when they engage with you? What senses are people using? So this is one that you could use if you run in a cafe. I saw some people from the feeder here as well, but you could, as they walk in, if they hear laughter, if they hear people working together, if they smell this incredible food that's being created and the support that's being offered, that makes a huge difference just in being able to understand the type of organization that you are. And is the message you deliver consistent with the experience that people have? So if you talk about a certain area, like with Tony's Chocolonely, do they talk about all these things and they live it out in their services? And so if you're probably already doing that, and the communication aspect is that bit that you need to work on. But are the actions you take consistent with the story you're telling? And do your team buy into these ideas, buy into these approaches that you take? And how could your team be a part of delivering that message? Obviously, they're already delivering the services, but yeah, would they be happy to tell a story to people, or one day a month? Would they just be happy to spend time on a call with a funder, or with a business, or a group, or a trust that are hoping to fund you, and they could just tell their own experiences of the work that they're doing? So I've thrown a lot at you here, and perhaps probably a bit too much in certain areas, but I felt it's helpful to kind of put it all together in these blocks. But we've written a bit of a book about this, which you can get on our website, which is just about these topics, as well as loads of other things in terms of how you communicate with people, how you can deliver your message to them effectively, and things that you can look at. So we tackle all sorts of things, funding, loads of different topics with partners of ours. So you can get that for free, or if you'd like a physical copy, just give me a shout and I'll send one your way. And it's got lots more kind of practical marketing tips about things you can use, and the ways that you can use these strategies that we've spoken about, and kind of use them in specific ways for your organization. And there's also got like workbook sections in as well, so you could work through all these questions in one place without having to have loads of different Word documents open. So thank you for listening, and thank you for doing what you're doing. I'm sure you're all delivering fantastic work, and hopefully I'll hear more about them either today or in the future. But I think having this approach, it may seem like a really silly way of doing it, because you want to just know how you can write 5 blog posts in an effective way, but once you have these methods sorted out, they will stand the test of time in terms of the channels that you would need to use and the technology that changes, and you can start to just generate so many more ideas than you would have if you were just kind of trying to come up with marketing ideas as you go. So having this approach can be really effective and enable you to reach more people and be able to deliver the message that you want to in the most effective way. So please get in touch if you ever want to have a specific conversation. Obviously, we give advice generally just for free, obviously, anyway. So just give us a shout and we're more than happy to chat through specific examples of how you can use this and use these techniques in your own organization. But yeah, thanks for listening. I'm going to stop talking now because I've overran.